We are live. Welcome back to the fourth and I think final Margin of Shavety live Q&A. I'm just going to give a brief update on the Movember fundraising effort so far, and then we'll jump straight into questions. Just while I'm sharing my screen here, guys, the Mo's are looking great, by the way. Are the girlfriends approving and wives approving, or how's that coming along?
Well,
mine is looking sad, so there's been no problem on that front.
My girl said one thing I can't say, but then the other one she said I looked like an 80s porn star. So
I've had that a few times as well. Yeah,
which everyone pretty much gets, but it is what it is. Yeah, I rock it, man. I rock it.
Yeah.
Sure. My wife can't stand it. She can't wait till things done.
Only a few days to go. It's a very good cause.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Righto, cool. Hopefully my screen's coming through here shortly. And I think last week on the live stream we just passed through the $2,000 target, and we pushed it up to $4,000 maybe 10 days ago, and we've just smashed through that, which is crazy. So a little over 5,000 New Zealand dollars. I don't have it here, but the Movember website does have like team rankings, and I think we're like around 50th place in New Zealand as well. So we're going along all right there too. We're ahead of like some pretty big companies. There's like some New Zealand banks and like airlines and all sorts of stuff that have teams that haven't raised this much. So nice work, team. So yeah, 52.80 so far. We had a massive donation this week from Hamish Hodder. He's donated like I think about half of his YouTube ad revenue for the month. So big shout out to Hamish. And yeah, it's all going towards a good cause with suicide prevention, men's mental health initiatives. So if you're interested in contributing to the Movember campaign, there will be the pinned comment in the chat should take you to this page. Or if you kind of aren't getting your question answered because there's too many comments coming through or something, can choose to do a super chat. We'll donate all of that revenue from the YouTube super chats as well. So that is that. Should we get into some questions, guys?
Sounds good. Let's go for it.
We've lost Brad. Where'd he go? Hang on. He's back. Brad, you back again?
I'm back. I'm closer to the router now too, so hopefully it works.
All good. Rightio, let's jump into it. We got a question here from SC358. Anyone have any ideas they've come across lately that they're willing to share, that you have your look into list or researching, or that you own? Any takers on that one?
Yeah, I like Boston Beer Company, ticker symbol SAM. I also like Activision Blizzard. I've been looking into them. And also Wix.com. I've been looking into a lot lately as well. So there's my 3 hot takes for you.
Nice. What's at the top of the list out of those so far?
Well, I'd have to say Boston Beer, seeing as I'm actively buying that. Activision Blizzard and Wix I've sold puts on. But I think Activision Blizzard I probably have to look less into because I'm very familiar with all those brands. Wix is one I think has a far more upside potential, but I know far less about. So I'd say Wix is probably the one I'm diving into the most right now. But yeah, that's it.
Is it anyone other than Pat Dorsey that you've seen buy into Wix, or is it mainly him?
Pat Dorsey, and then there's oh god, I drew a blank the other day, and I'm drawing a blank today. He already owns it too. One sec, I'll find it for you. Let me get back. Move on to someone else, and I'll get you the name in like 10 seconds. But move on to someone else. I gotta find in my messages here.
I'll go with mine. So the two that interest me are Postco and CI Medical. CI Medical is a Japanese company. And
are you guys hearing Andrew twice?
Nope.
No.
Yeah.
Can you hear me though?
Yeah, we can hear you good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So CI Medical, it covers the dental business, or provides all the dental products in Japan. It's the largest mail order business in Japan. And the founder, CEO owns 49% of the company. It's a high ROE business with little to no leverage. And so it fits all the boxes of a good business. It's growing business. The efficiency is growing. So not only are the top and bottom line growing, but it's becoming more efficient with its costs. So it's one of the companies that I pulled the trigger on last week. And it's been down 8% since. So I'm in it for the ride. We'll see where it goes. But
What's the market cap on that one? How big is the company?
I do not know. It's
Okay.
a small cap growth. So
Okay.
I haven't looked at specifics on market cap.
Cool.
What was the company there, Vion?
It's CI Medical. So my most
Right.
recent video is actually on that. So
Yeah, cool.
that's the company.
Is that a U.S. company?
No, Japan.
Japan. That's right, Japan. Okay.
Nice. I've got one I've been looking at, but I don't want to act like I'm some giant fund manager who doesn't talk about their stocks. But it's like a $20 million market cap. It's probably the smallest company I've ever looked at. So I'd prefer not to mention it right now. But maybe it's one I'll talk about at some point. It's on the ASX. I haven't looked at an Australian company for a little while, so it's been interesting digging into that. It's funny, kind of jumping between countries. We have slightly different cultures and slightly different accounting standards and slightly different tax policies and some other things like that to kind of look out for. But maybe that's one I'll talk about if I ever do pull the trigger on it.
So it's your version of racist. You're trying to buy a third of the company before you talk about it too much.
Yeah, I don't have the ability to buy a third of $20 million, but I don't know. If I make it a reasonable chunk, I guess because I've done that maths before on investments that I have. Like, if you run the numbers on what percentage of Alibaba I own, for example, you're going to get to some pretty tiny numbers. It's going to be a lot of 0.0000 before you get to any shareholding percentage in that. But maths is a little different on those smaller ones. You guys got anything else interesting you've been looking at?
Yeah, I have two. One I already own, and that's Dropbox. It's a company. It's about 12 or 13% of my overall portfolio right now, and they've had a recent drop. Really, I think it's. I don't think it's. It's more of regards, I think, because they're going into the metaverse and all that kind of stuff. But Dropbox is just a cash flow machine. I think they pushed out, $600-700 million worth of free cash flow this year. They also do about $1 billion by 2024. They just are so consistent. They're continually growing 12 to 15% each and every single quarter. So that's definitely a company that I might be looking into buying more, even though I already own them. Another one is Alight, ALIGHT. It's not really well known. I want to say their market cap's between like a billion and 2 billion. Now they IPO'd, I think, here in the last year. They're kind of similar to Paycom, if you guys know that company. They do payroll, they do all HR, and they're a really unique space. I mean, they have a bunch of companies that are in the Fortune 500 that work with them. I have going to be doing a video soon on that company. I'm just doing more research, but that one looks really, really interesting, especially from a valuation standpoint and kind of where they're at in the market. So those are kind of two on my list.
Cool. Andrew, you've looked a little bit at Dropbox as well, right? Or have owned it in the past?
Yeah. Dropbox was actually my largest position at one point. I've actually completely sold out of it. But Dropbox, my thesis on Dropbox didn't change at all. That wasn't the reason for selling out. It was actually for a reason, for really a habit that I'm trying to break right now. But I sold one of my winners to invest in one of my losers, so to speak. But that was Sprouts Farmers Market. I sold Dropbox and took that capital and put it into Sprouts Farmers Market back when I think I was only up maybe 4% on Sprouts Farmers Market. and Dropbox I was up about 60% on. So
Yeah.
that's the only reason. My thesis on Dropbox didn't change. I don't think Dropbox, nor Sprouts for this matter, though. I don't think Dropbox has the characteristics of being a long-term compounder. I think it's purely a value play. That's my own thoughts on it, and that was always my thesis. I think you were just really investing on that re-rating multiple, and I think that's still the thesis today. But I do think it's still a good company. I have nothing really bad to say about it, other than I don't think it's a natural compounder. But yeah, I've sold out of it, but my thesis didn't really change. It was just strictly, I think Dropbox was valued up here, and I think Sprouts was valued down here. So that's really it.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, we have a super chat from Lazy Investor. Thank you, Lazy Investor. $5. Hit the like button. Good cause. Question for J Money in the comments. So I think that is referring to this one. J Money, are you concerned about the buybacks being entirely funded by debt? I know Kleiman likes him, but I can't figure out why. Lots of financial engineering going on over there. Not sure which company that's referring to, but I'm assuming you'll figure that out.
I assume he's talking about Dropbox. So Seth Klarman recently bought Dropbox. I think I think is that 2 or 3% of his portfolio now in there. So, as far as like a thesis on Dropbox goes, they're unusual in the fact where if you look at them, they have no earnings. They haven't had earnings since they IPO back in 2018, but and usually when you look at companies, their free cash flow and earnings over a long period of time are pretty close. Where Dropbox, it hasn't been that way. Their business model, they actually get the money up front and they don't have to pay for their vendors later on. So they get this huge free cash flow up front, which is incredible. So they can go and fund different things with that. And if you look at their earnings, it's actually catching up. And I think this year might be the first year they actually have earnings. And certainly they'll even be increased next year on that front. Now, as far as share buybacks go, so this company is around, I don't even know what the market cap on it right now is. I want to say it's around 10 billion, at least that's what it was. It's 9.3 billion right now. So, and they announced that they were going to do a share buyback of about $1 billion several months ago. So if you think about it, they're buying back 10% of the company, which is pretty amazing. However, they issued about $1.3 billion in debt this year too. So I think Lazy Investor was I'm assuming that's what he's talking about. Are you okay with them going into debt to fund their buybacks? So I think that's an interesting question. I guess I don't really look at it that way. I think that their free cash flow easily can generate and buy back, do the $1 billion buyback over a long period of time. So they're supposed to be doing buybacks, I think, over 3 or 4 years. So I'm not personally worried about it.
Mm-hmm. I just want to say something on that front there. So because I actually dove in a while ago when I used to own Dropbox, I dove into like a bunch of these aspects of Dropbox, and the whole going into debt to buy back their own shares and stuff. The debt is actually there's no interest rate tied to that debt. If you actually read into the prospectus documents, they're actually the simplest way I can explain it is they're essentially swing trading their own shares. They're issuing debt to buy back their shares cheap, and then they're offering to sell those shares back to the market at a much higher price. It's a lot more intricate than that, but they don't actually have an interest rate tied to that debt. Unless there was something more recently that I haven't followed up on, Justin, you can speak to that.
No.
So that is what I'm thinking of, right? It's that debt that they issued that's really just a convertible note, really? Is that my understanding?
It is a convertible note, and I can't remember when it converts. It's years out in the future when it converts. So they're kind of betting on themselves that they're actually at a cheap valuation right now, and that they're going to be worth more in 3, 4, or 5 years. So if they're not, that's going to backfire on them. But I think the management is correct that they're undervalued at this time. And that's going to pay off well for them. But if they look in 4 or 5 years from now, and right now Dropbox trading on $24, if it's trading at 24, 4 or 5 years from now, that backfired on them. But I don't think that's the case. I think they're very undervalued where they're at right now,
Yeah.
especially based on that $1 billion free cash flow they're supposed to be at in 2024.
What's the what's the competitive landscape look like for Dropbox, and do they intend to expand out to other products at the moment, or is it really just storage, like kind of directly competing with something like just a Google Drive product or like a OneDrive from Microsoft, or am I missing something there?
So yeah, they're a share filing company. I think they have around 700 million customers, something like that. Most of them, which are not paid customers, I think maybe 85% use it for free. Or only about 15% actually are the paid customers. And a lot of people that look at Dropbox say, hey, they have no moat. You have Google, you have Microsoft, they're just going to squash Dropbox. But if you look at their financials, I mean, they are so consistent. They are growing between 10 and 15% every single quarter. Their customer base is growing every single quarter. Even their paid customers are going up. They bought HelloSign. They bought, is it DocSign?
DocSign.
DocSign.
Yeah.
So they're trying to make like a full service type thing where you can go in and do share filing, but then you can also do electronic signage. There's a lot that they're trying to do. And now they're trying to get into the metaverse as well too. Now, Houston, who's the CEO and president of Dropbox, he's actually on the board for Facebook. So he's actually really good friends with Mark Zuckerberg, which may be negative.
He's actually like his best friend. It's like public information that's like one of his best friends.
Yeah. So they're so that might be a negative or a positive thing depending on how you look at it. But I think Dropbox things is in a really good space. I think people just dismiss them because they think that Google and Microsoft are just going to squash them. But I mean, you look at their presentations, they're growing every single quarter, including their users. It's pretty impressive.
I put videos out about this, like I said, a long time ago, but maybe last year or something. But the issue with people's thesis, like I said, I don't still own it, but I can still take the bull side in this case. And the reason being is, look, Dropbox operates in a landscape that everyone says Microsoft and Google is going to crush them at. The issue is Microsoft and Google is so big now that the landscape that Dropbox is competing in is too small for them to invest their time and resources. It's not going to move the needle for Microsoft and Google. Like Microsoft and Google has to try fighting Facebook for, all this new technology of AR and VR and stuff like that. They're not really going to be focusing on Dropbox uprooting their whole business model. Like Google and Microsoft already have their foot in the water there, and the customers that are going to stick to them are going to stick to them. But Dropbox is pretty much going after everyone else. So Dropbox can probably go from a $10 billion to a $20 billion business as it stands today. But Dropbox, that's why I said they don't have the compounding nature to them. Like I don't think they can go from a $20 billion to a $100 billion company, if that makes any sense.
And Dropbox is willing to play with everybody, where Google and Microsoft is not. They're very, whoever wants to work with us, we want to work with them, and that's not the case with their competitors.
Yeah.
I guess my question on Dropbox, which I was in Dropbox earlier this year, and as I researched more, I was just kind of like, nah, I can't keep going with the company, mainly because even in my use case, I started off using Dropbox, but then it became more about what are the plugins that work with Dropbox, which Dropbox does a good job of working with almost everybody. But then ease of access of sharing that information with other people was a lot easier, whether if I was using a Microsoft OneDrive account, was easier to share that information with everybody, or using Google Gmail. And so my question becomes, because more and more people are just going with ecosystems. So we can look at companies like Adobe, for example. People don't really care that Adobe costs so much money, but as far as everything is in that ecosystem, everybody just wants to make sure everybody remains in that ecosystem. So my question becomes, how is Dropbox going to continue to fight against when, even though Microsoft or Google or Apple, which is becoming even a bigger player in the space as well, none of them are necessarily attacking Dropbox directly, but they're all coming at it at different angles, where it's making it less and less, like making it more reason for me to just be like, well, I already have Apple for all of this stuff. Might as well just add on an Apple iCloud service and just have that already going for me to be able to easily share this information. So my question becomes, how does Dropbox continue to deal with challengers coming at them left and right? And then the other problem I have with Dropbox was they're adding customers, but much like myself, a lot of the customers are not paying. So a lot of the customers end up being just free customers that use the service for a little bit. And then when we hit the cap, we create a new email address so we can get the new cap again. So I guess the question I'm just...
Nobody does that. No one does that.
So the question is like, what are the incentives?
Secrets.
So I can respond to both of those. So the first one I think is just very simple. You're saying about like the competition and stuff like that. I don't think, this is just my view, especially when investing and stuff. I think a lot of people worry too much about like, well, what's stopping the competition from doing this and doing that? But my response would always be, that's usually been the bear thesis forever, especially with Dropbox. And that was while Dropbox was only a file sharing platform, right? Now they have all these other different features. And to Justin's point, they're still growing 10 to 15% per year, sometimes 20, 30% in certain aspects of their business. So it's like, if that's been the bear thesis for the past 10 years, the bear thesis needs to change, because even though I might not be able to tell you maybe specifically what their edge is, the proof is in the pudding. You can say, well, clearly they're doing something right because they're growing year in and year out. So that'd be the first point. The second point, what was the second point again? Sorry.
I think that was basically it. Mainly, the other part is how do they make? Yeah, exactly. Free users to become paid users.
Oh yeah. So that's also a very common bear thesis. And the thing with Dropbox is the numbers are very distorted. So a lot of the free users are people who might, hey man, check out the sick beat I just made. I'm going to send it to you. Oh man, I ran out of space. Let me create a new document. Let me create a new email, and use that to sign up with Dropbox. The vast majority of those non-paying users are users that Dropbox isn't going to make much money on anyway, right? They might make, a couple dollars here, a couple dollars there. That's why they're allowing those people to use it for free, so that they get them used to their ecosystem. And so now when they go work for a company that is actually going to be one of their, paying top dollar for Dropbox services, when all the people who used to use Dropbox for free are now working for this company, it's going to be a lot easier for this company now to subscribe to Dropbox's services, because all of their employees are now familiar with the service. So it's very similar to think of America, where the top 1% make, the majority of the income or something, right? It's kind of the same thing with Dropbox, where the top small percentage is actually making the biggest impact on Dropbox's financials. The other 85% or whatever, they're just trying to get them attracted and familiar with Dropbox's platform, but they're not at all concerned whether they're going to pay or not, because it's not going to make a big difference whatsoever. So I hope that kind of clarified it. Justin, anything else to add?
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm just looking at their last earnings report. Their paid users went from 15.25 million to 16.49 million. So, I would kind of flip it on you, Kelechi, and ask you, because I know you're a big Intel person. Is it, when I look at Intel and AMD, right? And I've done numerous videos on Intel. I've not invested in Intel, because for me, I have a hard time looking at Intel and AMD and how is AMD not going to take up more space of Intel over this, over the next year or 2 years or 3 years down the road? How is Intel going to fend that off from AMD just taking over, right? Because didn't they go from 80% to 60% of their space or something like that?
Yeah, and it's dwindling. It's dwindling every single quarter, especially when we look at what's it called, cloud sharing, and a lot of cloud data center revenue is also declining. And I think my main thing with Intel is less on the side of technology per se, and more on the side of them manufacturing chips moving forward. But even on the technology side, with their latest chips that they just released, it's actually on par with all the AMD chips. So Intel has not been necessarily as far behind as most people have assumed them to be. However, they haven't been on par with AMD for the last few years, but Intel is finally getting on par with AMD. But my main thesis has always been on the manufacturing part for Intel, as far as them opening their manufacturing up to manufacture for AMD, manufacturing for anybody else who needs that extra manufacturing space. Just because, as we've seen in the last year, more and more companies are trying to bring more manufacturing back onshore rather than being offshore in other countries. And as more countries want to open up and be able to manufacture some of these major components in their countries, that's where I'm looking at Intel playing a bigger and bigger role in that. So that's what I see as like Intel's advantage over any other chip manufacturer, especially when we look at companies like NVIDIA or companies like AMD. However, they still have competition in that, because recently we just had an announcement that Samsung is going to be building a chip here in the United States. So that's seeing increased competition as well. So it will be interesting to see if Intel can build out its chip fabrication plants across the US fast enough to match the output that other companies are trying to challenge them on. And also, it'll also be interesting to see if their new chipsets can also be used in other applications versus AMD, where it's now more price competitive versus in the past where Intel has been very much more expensive. And so now they're, with AMD having very good multi-core processes on a lot of their systems, Intel is coming back and hitting them hard, but it's just going to have to see if companies are willing to buy the Intel chipsets.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically has been my theory on Intel, and seeing it play out. I expected that over the next year or so that Intel will lose market share to AMD slowly, but it wouldn't be, they're not going to lose the entire market share. And then eventually it's going to be a turnaround situation where Intel is going to be able to start flexing its muscle a little bit more, which I'm glad that AMD forced Intel to do this, because for a while it seemed like Intel was not really at the same point that they used to be, where they were just kind of the dominating force in the industry. But again, this is a bet and hope that it's kind of, there's a hope part of it that I'm throwing in there, because I don't know if it's going to happen or not. There's no for sure that Intel is going to be able to ward off AMD, but that's my expectation moving forward.
Cool.
Interesting. Yeah.
We have another super chat from Lazy Investor. I got to be honest, I have no idea what this means, but Justin, you might as well. You might. But thanks for the super chat, Lazy Investor. Everyone looks perplexed about that.
I'm not sure what that is.
All good.
I'm confused.
Righto. Any other questions you guys want to have a crack at? I see there's a few about, like, we got one on Micron, Pinterest, Redbubble. Anything you guys are keen to dive into there?
Pinterest, I've briefly looked at. I just can't wrap my head around valuation and moat specifically. And I'm not like huge on moat necessarily. I'm just, if you like look at my portfolio and stuff, it's usually just things that I actively use or I'm like a consumer of. I don't need like this, big moat thesis. I just need to understand, why do I use this product or service? And I just personally don't use Pinterest. So I can't really speak on that front. And because I haven't looked deep enough into it, I just can't wrap my head around the valuation. I do have some friends who are invested in Pinterest though. And it does look like an early Facebook from financials and all of that and stuff.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up their revenue, gross profit, net income. This is kind of what that's done over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are saying that a bet on Pinterest isn't really a bet on social media as much as it is as an e-commerce, like an early e-commerce company.
Right.
And I guess I can understand that. But like I said, I'm probably not the person to ask.
Do you guys
'Cause
use Pinterest?
No, well, I don't know if they can speak to it.
What are their? Do you guys? I assume their demographics are very female heavy. I would have thought.
I thought that too until I found out So oddly enough, this is what boggles my mind about Pinterest is I thought it would have been, the majority woman using Pinterest, and I never use it, and I just don't understand the moat. However, my father, who just got a smartphone last year, knows nothing, has no social media, knows nothing about. He has to talk into his phone to text because he can't actually type. He actually has a Pinterest and redid the entire first floor of his home from Pinterest ideas. So Clearly Pinterest is doing something outside the box. I don't know what it is, but take that information for what it's worth, that my 52-year-old father is using Pinterest, and he just got a smartphone last year and has no social media. So, yeah.
My dad uses Pinterest too.
Yeah.
I got big time boomer market share.
Yeah, I mean, my wife uses to go on there and find recipes for cooking and things like that. But I mean, I know Pinterest, like from analysts, I think the thing's going to grow like 50% or something like that per year going out the next several years. But I always get scared when companies are supposed to grow that much. Just because, even if they just barely miss, I mean, the stock just tanks because there's just so much growth, built. And that's what we've seen, right? I think it's dipped almost half, something like that over the last few months, just because there's so much growth built into it. Now, I don't know enough about it to, decide either way.
I think the reason Pinterest actually crashed was there was speculation that they were going to get bought out or something. So the stock price hiked up one day, went up 50% one day or something.
PayPal.
And then, PayPal was going to buy them, and it didn't come to fruition.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Interesting.
I still think PayPal should have definitely bought them, though. It would have been a beautiful, because you get all those users and you can automatically, the whole thesis that everybody had on e-commerce for Pinterest, especially for artists, it would have been pretty cool to have PayPal just buy them and then just acquire all those users to automatically start using PayPal. It sounded like a good idea, but for some reason, PayPal freaked out after the stock crashed when the rumor dropped, and they said they weren't doing it.
I'd be freaking out looking at this 100 times free cash flow, 40 times EVE. But
yeah, a lot.
But
I mean, I guess you can grow into that, but we're
Tom,
probably growing off a small base here.
It's the cheapest it's ever been, though.
That's like for these Black Friday sales when companies slowly ramp the price up in the months leading up to it, and then they can say 70% off, guys.
I will say I'm not entirely, and shout out to Andrew Brown for this because we were just having this conversation the other day, but I'm not entirely focused on just free cash flow. Sometimes I do what's called look through earnings, and especially for these early stage companies, I don't think free cash flow is the best because they are investing every dime that comes in and stuff. I think, and Tom, I think you've done this in one of your videos before. Maybe it was ASOS, but what you kind of have to do is do these look through earnings where if you understand the business well enough, you can at least project out what you think revenues might be. And then you have to do what you think a realistic long-term net margin would be. And then you can have your future earnings, and then you can discount that back. So looking at current free cash flows a lot of the time is very distorted and probably isn't useful. Looking at any current metrics wouldn't be useful either. Even current revenue to EV to revenue or something. You can't even look at it that way because that's not accounting for margins, right? So you have to extrapolate out the revenues, toss what you think a realistic margin would be, and that's what I'm currently working on with Wix, trying to figure out. So I think you'd have to do that for Pinterest.
Yeah, I like that idea of kind of, I guess, trying to figure out the sort of terminal economics, I guess, once they've done all the growing and they get to a more mature business, trying to figure out what that might look like. And that's kind of the exercise I went through with ASOS. It's easy. The net income's massively lumpy because they're a very kind of low margin business. So if the margin goes from 3% to 2%, that's a huge drop in earnings, right? So I sort of project out revenue growth and say, maybe they're targeting a 4% margin. over time, and you can kind of go from there. The other thing that just jumped into my head is sort of the Buffett concept of owner earnings, which is effectively, it's very similar to free cash flow in mature businesses, but he takes basically the operating cash flow, and instead of subtracting all capital expenditure like you do when you try to get to free cash flow, he just tries to take off any maintenance capital expenditure. Tries to split maintenance and growth so that you can try to account for that. But in many businesses, that's a very sort of gray area.
I was going to say software especially.
Yeah, software especially. Yeah.
Such a difficult business to differentiate it with.
Yeah, I mean, if it's real estate or something, and it's like, we put a new roof on as maintenance, but we built a new building as clearly growth. But software is much harder. And just quickly, we got a comment on Brad. Has he gone to Turkey again? He's currently in Turkey. He's checking out one of the racist logistics warehouses, and they've got terrible internet, so he keeps dropping out. He sends his apologies from Turkey. So. There we go. Righto. After dinner investor.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Tom allowed to shave his handlebars without getting rid of the actual mustache. Please have mercy on us. Yeah, if we do this again next year, maybe I'll just go. I'll reject like an obscene handlebar.
Do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys reckon you'd be able to get away with that?
Was that?
Do you guys think you'd be able to get away with a more outrageous mustache style?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I do what I want, man. It's my face.
Fair enough.
All
right.
I like after dinner investor here. I didn't fully read it yet. He said portfolio structure idea to know what I own better and be more manageable. 20% high conviction bets, 20% cash for perfect investment, and last 20% made up of small clones I'm looking into. Is that a question, or he's telling us though?
Yeah, maybe do we not. Like it?
Yeah, I mean, so he's pretty much just saying like a 5x20 portfolio, or would it be a 20x5? A 5x20, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty solid idea for people who are very confident in their bets. I don't think I stray too far from that, so I don't think it's a bad idea at all.
Yeah, seems reasonable.
Yeah, the thing I struggle with these types of hypotheticals is I think the environment you're investing in can change this equation quite a bit. Like if you look back at March 2020, or what I imagine it would have been like investing through the financial crisis, because I wasn't investing then. I think there's situations where you can afford to be much more diversified and still earn good returns. Whereas when you're in an environment like today, and valuations, broadly speaking, at least, are very high, and it can be harder to find ideas, I think you probably do tend to end up a little more concentrated, and maybe you get closer to something like this. But I'd prefer not to have very strict rules and, be fully invested with 5 ideas and then find a bunch of other stuff that's been on your watch list forever, and, just kind of be stuck frozen and not know what to do in that situation. Yeah. I prefer to be kind of flexible on these things.
Yeah. I don't know if it was After Dinner Investor or if it was Frank from Investing with Frank last video that asked the question of portfolio structure. But to that point, I think I said I don't really think of it as like, how many stocks with what percentage and stuff. I just think of it as like money, like just like I have this much money saved up. I'm willing to swing for the fences, or I'm willing to place this size bet.
Sure.
It's kind of the same thing. So if I get more money coming in and there's more opportunities, maybe I diversify a little bit more. If I have less money coming in and I don't think there's many opportunities, then I go a lot more concentrated and make, heavier bets into really deep discounted companies. If that helps you at all, that's the way I visualize it anyway. I I don't necessarily structure it by like percentages and how many stocks. So I kind of agree with you, Tom, that I think you just have to be flexible.
Yeah.
What do you all think about basing it off of correlation, like buying a stock that's totally not correlated with another, or buying a kind of asset that's not correlated with another? I think Ray Dalio talks about it, that you should have some uncorrelated assets. Do you all have any thoughts on that?
I ignore that just because I have like a longer time horizon. So if like all my stocks are getting crushed at once, it doesn't necessarily bother me. He's also managing a fund, so like he has to show incremental growth in order to keep investors. When you're managing your own portfolio, I don't think it really matters. I think if you're confident in what you're investing in, just go for it. Personally,
Yeah, I think if you're taking a more quantitative approach to investing, that's probably not a bad way to go. For me, I guess I'm trying to think as much like a business owner and a buyer of businesses as I can, and that's not really how a business person thinks. So I'd rather just buy a basket of companies that I understand, I think have a good future, and price makes sense. Keep it simple, as Andrew likes to tell us.
A question for you guys. So after Dinner Investor asked about 20% of his portfolio cloning, do you guys clone anyone? Have you cloned anyone? And like literally they buy something and you buy it just because they bought it? Do you guys do that at all? Just curious.
you're saying purely just because they bought it, no other reason?
Right.
No.
I mean, you might do a little research, but like, you hear, for example, Moshe Pabrai, really liking Tencent and Prosus, and do you go and potentially buy something like that and just kind of mirror what he does, or another super investor? Just curious if any of you guys do that.
I think a good question to ask yourself. Well, I don't, but I think the reason being is I think you run into the issue. Let's say you followed Monish Pabrai into buying Alibaba, and he sold at, I don't know what it is, 20, 30, 40% loss, right? All right, what do you do now? You're caught with your pants by your ankles, like you don't know what to do. So, I don't think you want to ever be caught in that situation. I think you can get ideas from people, but don't just blindly follow them. That's my opinion.
I think for me, it's a good place to get ideas, but when I do buy it, I'm okay with getting a 50% loss. Like it's like what Charlie says, right? When you buy it, you should be okay to, like, even if it's complete loss of capital, you should be fine with it. And if you're not, then you should not get in it to begin with. So if it's a cloning idea, even with the 20% bet that after an investor asked about, if you're not okay with losing 20% of your assets, then that's not your bet to begin with. So that's just my take on when I pull the trigger. It's even if it's a cloner, it shouldn't be something that I'm going to stay up all night because of it.
Yeah, I think cloning's a good way of, or looking at 13Fs or whatever is a good way of sourcing ideas. But I think there's probably two ways you can do it. Either you can be a shameless cloner, and I'm running a little experiment on my channel at the moment, starting a portfolio like that. But you have to be very mechanical, I think, and just if someone buys, you buy. If someone sells, you sell, and just kind of not think very much about it. But for me to be comfortable putting a serious amount of money to work in an investment, like I need to understand the underlying business and everything. So I use it for idea sourcing more than anything. We do have another super chat from Frank. Shout out to Frank. Honeyma, Zuck, or Elon, best capital allocator? Any volunteers for that one?
I'll go up. Elon, mainly because Tony Ma, I don't really know anything about him except for the fact that I listened to Monish talk about him for a long time. I was like, oh my God, this guy sounds amazing. But I don't really know nothing about it. Zuck, I don't know. Zuck is just like, I don't know. I just don't like Zuck, Facebook, all of that. And Elon, I just like what he's done so far with, if we look at the companies that he's built. I enjoy Tesla. I think somebody put it in the chat that Tesla is now the #1 best-selling car in Europe, and that includes like gas-selling vehicles as well. And as much as we may struggle with the valuation of the company itself. That means nothing about the product itself. Like the actual cars are amazing. What he did in building out the entire facility, the charging stations, all of that, are working with the people that he worked with to build all that stuff out has been amazing. Then we look at SpaceX as well. That has been an amazing company. And so to me, those are like, plus I like those type of engineering feats a lot more than social media feats, because that's like, yeah, that's cool, but this is a lot cooler in my opinion. So I always take Elon over any of the other guys just because of what he has created and he has helped create and bring into the world. So
I can just imagine Frank yelling at his computer right now.
His comment. Well, Frank, for you, I have a question. If you're still listening, am I muted actually or no?
No, we can hear you.
Frank, if you're still listening, are you saying capital allocator in terms of measurable ROI, meaning like, for example, like a Warren Buffett, like return on actual capital? Or are you saying capital allocator in terms of, for example, moving the world forward, like in terms of doing good? Because in the first case, I would say probably Pony Ma is probably the best with actual return on invested capital. In terms of pushing the world forward, I mean, I don't think you can argue that Elon Musk is probably the best visionary in that sense and actually getting things done. Mark Zuckerberg is just, he's actually a cloner by nature. Mark Zuckerberg, I think, is probably one of the best cloners who existed, because he can take an idea. I mean, if you actually just think of his backstory with Facebook, he takes an idea and he quickly makes it better than the person who thought of the idea. And he does it so eloquently and in a way to shut the original idea out. And he's been doing that not just with Facebook itself, but he's been doing that with all other aspects of their business. So, yeah.
See, when I think of like best capital allocator, my first thought is like, how well does the company take cash, free cash flow, and then put it back in the company and then generate more free cash flow? That's kind of where I go. But if that's the case, I would probably say Pony Ma and Elon are the best. The reason I say Zuckerberg's the worst is that, and I'm a Facebook bull, but he's got, I don't know, 50, 60, $70 billion worth of cash sitting there on the balance sheet. So obviously he's going towards the metaverse right now. They're going to dump a ton of money into that. But historically, he has not done a great job taking all that cash and then potentially putting it back in the business. He's tried Libra and other stuff that maybe hasn't worked out. But like Pony Ma for 10 cents, just the money that they take, they buy other companies, they keep putting it back. Elon Musk is probably is one of the best, visionaries out there, but he also is incredibly smart. And all of a sudden the stock goes up, 1,000%, and he's selling more shares, and people are buying the shares, and he'll take that money, put it right back in the company. I mean, he's been able to be completely self-sufficient on building the company using investor money. It's just been absolutely amazing. He's just taken that capital and just put it right back in the company and just grown the company. And it's kind of scary how powerful it is. He says something about Dogecoin and it shoots up or goes down or whatever. But he's Pony Ma and Elon Musk by far, I think, are the best. Where I think Zuckerberg could be better, and maybe the metaverse maybe will go that way, where they spend a lot of money and that builds out the company more. But I think he's the worst of the three.
Yeah, I think if you, sorry, go ahead.
I think I would agree with Justin with Pony Ma being the best at capital allocation. I think it was Tencent was the company that Monish Babra was talking about firing the two bazookas. And in fact, all three companies are spawners, right? They're investing small amounts of money, different places, and trying to see if, one of the ideas sticks or not. But even for me, it would be Pony Ma, Elon, and then Zuck at the lowest. That's it.
Yeah, I think Elon's a hard one to judge, because I think you have to detach the stock price gains from the internal returns that the business generates. Like if you look at the returns on capital of Tesla is probably where you want to focus there.
Yeah.
And going back to the whole growth versus maintenance capex discussion, it's a really difficult one, I think, to actually judge right now with Tesla. You probably need to wait 5 or 10 years till they've built out a few more gigafactories and so on, and then you can see what a mature Tesla actually generates in terms of returns on capital.
Even PayPal, if you look, right, like Elon Musk was one of the head honchos way back in the heydays of PayPal. They weren't profitable at all. Like Elon Musk doesn't have, in a sense, Zuckerberg's almost the same way, but he has ideas, and I think Frank responded in the comments saying he's a very good visionary and entrepreneur, and I think that's very true. But PayPal is only as profitable as it is today due to the current management and the management over the past decade. It wasn't due to Elon Musk. However, PayPal wouldn't be where it is today if it wasn't for Elon Musk. So I think you have to kind of weigh those two bits of data together. Zuckerberg is almost the same way though, and I recommend if you haven't seen it, even though the movie is very distorted and the acting's not the best and stuff, but The Social Network is very interesting because they did hit some points perfectly spot on, which is that Mark Zuckerberg doesn't necessarily care about the money, and it's never really been about the money. So I don't think he's actually that great of a capital allocator. I think the people he surrounds himself with are. Mark Zuckerberg's just an extreme nerd that has, like I said, he's a cloner. He takes other people's ideas and he's way better at making those ideas come to life than the people who thought of them themselves. So
I mean, I would
go ahead, Kalichi.
Yeah, I would also add, as far as Microsoft also falls into the cloning category as well, of a company that literally none of the ideas that they've started out originally through Microsoft has ever actually like popped the way they wanted it to pop. But when they copy other companies' ideas, they've done a good job of making those ideas flourish a lot better. But I would say, I mean, I would ask you guys this question as well, is would you rather have a great capital allocator or a visionary manager? Because I think for companies, depending on where they are, you need different types of leadership to take control and to handle things in certain ways. Because I wouldn't want like Mark Zuckerberg in the company that is established and is trying to like run its race and trying to like build on itself. But I wouldn't want I guess Pony Ma. Well, Pony Ma has built Tencent to what it is, so he probably is a special case. But I wouldn't want somebody who's able to just run a good ship to be able to build a new company off ground. So I think in each case, I don't think this is like a good comparison between all three of them, because each one of them are doing something completely different and needed to be different as well. Because Elon Musk, his focus is not trying to give investors return on capital. That's a waste of his time. Like, why would you want to spend his time doing that? Zuck is not really doing that either, because he's trying to figure out, how do I escape the Apple ecosystem? And then Pony Ma is doing his own thing in the sense of he's building out a new world order with video games and everything else. So I think each one of them are doing something completely different, where we can't really compare each one of them. And I think somebody said it in the chat, is until we look at the backstory, then we can start comparing like Hubert Jolie for Best Buy versus GE's Jack Welch, which I don't like Jack Welch, but that's a whole other thing. Or any of these guys that have been capital allocators in the past and either turned the company around or any of these things. So I think that would be a better question. But at the end of the day, I'll always pick Elon just because I'm a nerd.
Let me reword this question. If you were a Berkshire Hathaway investor today, and you had to pick one of these three people to run the company after Buffett and Munger left, who would you want?
Pony Ma.
Pony
There
Ma.
you go. That's the answer. Thanks for your question, Frank. All right. Any other questions you guys want to have a crack at? Yeah, we got the chat fired up with this discussion. I think Elon Musk is definitely the best raiser of capital that I've ever seen. But
Yeah.
He tells a wonderful story, and I think I mean he just does a good job of storytelling, and he also does a good job of building something that people love, or actually just building a cult. And he's done a wonderful job with building a cult. There's no cult stronger than the Tesla cult. It's amazing.
I don't think After Dinner Investor liked my hypothetical there.
Yeah, I'll never forget when Tesla, Elon Musk had that whole thing about the Tesla truck, and it was all hyped up, and then he's on stage and he takes that ball and he throws it at the window, and it like cracks. It's supposed to be shatterproof, and like I have in my mind, he's so smart. I feel like he knew that was going to happen. It just creates more like talk and just to he's. I don't think I'd want Elon. If I had, an established company to come in, I think he'd get bored. I think he would just
be on Twitter all day.
Oh my goodness. He would drive me crazy. But certainly as a small company growing, he definitely does a good job with that.
The guy probably works like 15 hours a day or something, but he somehow finds time to tweet constantly.
Just one asks, any thoughts on Roku? I don't know if any of you can. I've never looked into Roku, but I don't know if any of you have.
I know nothing about Roku.
All I know is that every TV I've bought in a while has all had Roku-enabled smart devices. Apart from that, I don't know nothing about Roku.
I have a Roku device in almost every room of my house, but I don't know. I have a hard time believing that it's just going to do so well long term. Like everything is a smart TV now. You can go buy a TV and you can just be able to download Netflix or whatever. So I guess even having Roku for so long, even their personal devices, I don't understand how they can set themselves apart from the competition long term with all these smart TVs.
Yeah, I know they're getting into content to be able to sell. I know they have ads on the Roku, and then they're also getting into content. But at the same time, I think the price has run up so much on Roku that the valuation to me no longer makes sense. So I've just kind of let it be. But they acquired. Do you guys remember Quibi?
No.
Well, yeah, exactly. But Quibi was supposed to be.
It was the biggest scale ever.
Yeah, it was supposed to be it was just they launched at the worst of time. But yeah, it's Roku has but they acquired Quibi, so they have a bunch of content that they're trying to put out on Roku, and then they're gonna add ads on it. So I don't know. They're doing something really cool as far as Roku is concerned. I just can't justify the valuation based off of, even though they're still the leading device as far as a smart TV, it's always Roku, and they get all that data. The question now becomes, how are they using it to their advantage? So we'll see though. But the other thing they're doing really well is they're positioning themselves as a middleman to get whether it's YouTube or Apple or Netflix to pay them a fee to be the default button on your remote, which is a big deal for a lot of companies to be the option of when somebody picks up a remote and they're like, oh, what do I want to watch? It's I can just press the Netflix button. That's actually a huge driver of revenue for them. But at the end of the day, that's like Justin said, I don't know how far they can keep playing that game, especially now Amazon has their own Fire TV and they're competing based off of price. You have Samsung and everybody else. Apple has its Apple TV. Google has the Google Chromecast stuff. So I don't know. They did a good job of starting off, but I don't know how they're going to continue making that last.
Yeah,
I think there's an interesting Quidizzle says Netflix will just compete with them eventually and wipe them out, just like Amazon is wiping out sellers with their own products. Now, I don't actually want to specifically, I have no thoughts on that, but I want to get people's take actually on Netflix, because I have a thesis that I don't think is common at all, but I've been saying this thesis for the past probably 2 years now. and that is that Netflix, in my opinion, and I think I'm going to catch a lot of hate for this, I think that Netflix will be the blockbuster of the future. And the reason I think Netflix is stuck in a catch-22, the issue being is if they stop investing their money, they don't have content to put out. So they need to keep investing, right? Because they need to keep investing in new content to put out. They need to keep buying businesses, whatever it may be, if they want to expand into video games or something, right? They need to keep investing capital. Now, the issue is they keep, now in a low interest rate environment, it's okay because they keep taking on debt to fuel their old debt. Very similar to like an AT&T or something, right? Take on new debt to fuel the old debt. But they're operating at a loss. Now, the only time that they can actually operate at a profit is when they stop investing their capital, ergo 2020, right? They stopped investing their capital. However, when they operate at a profit, like I said, it's because they stopped investing their capital, but they can't stop investing their capital because that's how they're going to lose their competitive advantage. So I think at worst, they're the next blockbuster. And I think maybe at best, they're the next AT&T, where they just keep, they keep issuing debt to pay back their old debt and create new content, and maybe they pay you out a dividend in the future. That's what's always held me, I mean, other than their balance sheet, but that's what's always pushed me away from Netflix, is I just strongly think that they're stuck in like this never-ending catch-22. What do you guys think? That's just my thought.
I agree with a lot of that. I guess the big question would be, does that catch-22 go away if they say over the next 5 years double their subscriber base, or maybe double their subscriber base and add 20% to the subscription price or something? I guess it's just like it's a scale game, I think, where I agree they're constantly spending money to invest in content, and this is again another one of those very blurred lines between, is this maintenance or growth capex? Because I saw some crazy stats. I'm blanking on the numbers, but obviously something like Squid Game has been massively successful, and there was some huge percentage of Netflix subscribers that watched it, but they didn't actually add that many new subscribers from something like Squid Game, and you have to like constantly keep feeding subscribers good content, or else eventually they're going to churn off. Whereas you compare that to something like YouTube, where Google pays zero for content, like we're out there putting it out, and they pay us half of the ad revenue or whatever. That's a much more attractive business
with all the new competitors coming in too. So for example, Disney, which has just this bazooka on their shoulders of content, and content that they've shown that they can just revamp. They don't even have to pay much at all for new writers, right? To like write new content. They just have to revamp their old content. And in addition, they pull all that content from Netflix, right? And you're seeing that more and more with all these other competitors coming out with their own platforms and stuff. So I just think the competitive landscape Netflix once stood upon is slowly or even quickly dwindling from underneath them. I agree with Anthony.
I'm really interested to.
Go ahead, Justin.
I'm really interested to see Discovery and Warner Media. So AT&T is spinning off Warner Media, which is about 50 to 60 billion dollars worth of AT&T, and then there are, well, when they combine, I guess, with Discovery, it's going to be around there next year, sometime mid 2022. And Warner Media has more content, like hours watch, compared to any of the other streaming companies that are out there. So, going to what you were saying, Andrew, the competitive nature of streaming just in general. But at the same time, I have Hulu, I have Disney, I have Netflix, and I think Netflix right now is like $13-14 a month. And that's pretty cheap. I mean, like people that you cable now, I mean, the cheapest cable you can get is $40-50 a month. Most people are spending $80 to $100 a month on cable. So I think Netflix can, raise the price. The issue is everything is so cheap. I mean, Disney, you can get Disney Plus for $8 a month or whatever it is. Hulu's around $5 or $6, if you don't mind watching the ads. So there's got to be some kind of intermediary in that streaming space where stuff has got to go up over time too. Disney, there's no way Disney can keep it at $8 a month. Like they're trying to get new subscribers, and even their content is pretty good, but they're not coming out as much as like Netflix and some other things. So it'll be interesting over time if these companies can continue raising prices and people are willing to pay it. I think Netflix is going to be okay, but are they going to price themselves out of competition?
So I actually think what's fascinating with Disney, which is fascinating with Disney, Amazon, Apple, in a sense, even like AT&T or something, I guess, but not really, because they're kind of what I think Netflix will be in the future. But what's fascinating with these, especially Amazon, Apple, and Disney, is that I actually think they can keep the prices as low as they want for a very, very long time, due to the fact that they can subsidize that business out with the cash flows from their profitable business. So very similar to what Amazon's been doing essentially their entire lifetime, right? Apple, without a doubt, can do that. They have loads of cash on the balance sheet, right? They can operate their streaming platform at a loss for almost as long as they want, right? Disney, in a sense, as long as we don't have another 2020 happen, right? Because they're obviously profitable from their parks and just their brand and everything themselves. I think that they can operate, Disney Plus at a loss as well. The other fascinating thing with Disney too is, like I said, they already have an arsenal of all this content as well. So it's actually they're running at a lower cost than a lot of their competitors. They own a lot of studios and stuff, right? So they don't have to rent out studio space and stuff. They're actually renting out some of their studio space to competitors. For example, I think I don't know the movie specifically or whatever, but I remember reading a news article where it was like Apple TV's actually filming, or one of their movies or one of their content, whatever it is actually filming in Disney studios. So Disney, I think, is actually, if I was forced to make a bet specifically on the space, I'd probably go with Disney. However, I don't own any of the companies listed right there, but that's just my thought. I think those three players specifically can operate at a loss. And that's the issue with Netflix, is they, at some point, they need to turn a profit, and they don't have anything to subsidize their business with.
I think as far as Netflix, I think Tom mentioned it earlier with feeding the beast of we want to be entertained, and the beast always has to be fed. And even though Disney has like a bazooka of old content, nobody cares. Like, I don't care about the old Disney movies. I don't care about. We've seen it. We've been there. We've done that. Nobody cares. Now they can revamp it for the younger generations, but even the younger generation doesn't care. As long as YouTube has been around, they've seen new shows. A lot of those old people, when I talk to a lot of the kids now, they don't care about any of those. They literally do not care. So Disney is actually facing a crisis, and we saw it with their last subscriber number in the sense of they're not releasing enough content to feed the beast. Netflix, even though we saw the problem, Netflix problem was in the beginning of this quarter or the beginning of this year, Netflix had a down number of subscribers. The reason for that is they didn't have a lot of new content coming out, like you mentioned. And this last quarter, they added, I think, 2.8 million new subscribers. And that's without Squid Game came out at the end of the quarter, so it didn't really affect the numbers that much. But this December, we're expecting to see a massive uptick in Netflix numbers, mainly because Squid Game was just unbelievable. And I think the advantage that Netflix has is the same advantage that I'll say Tesla has, where they can just issue shares because people love the stock. And as long as people love the stock and are willing to buy the stock, you can kind of issue shares for free and people are still going to stay with it. Plus, Netflix is trying to do other things like go into merch, which is something they should have done a long time ago. But they're finally doing a lot more merch. Video games is kind of there, but we'll see how that goes out. But then they're also licensing their products to partner up with like Target and partner up with other stores to create other things for the company. So they're starting to invest in other areas to generate cash flow. But I think when it comes to content creation, every single one of the media brands that we've ever known, it's the same problem that they all face. It's Disney putting in $100 million into a movie and hoping to make, $110 million back. This has been a problem for content creation of any kind because the beast, us, always want new content, good content, more content regularly. The beautiful thing that Netflix has found is they can make trash shows. For example, all the Christmas movies that are about to come out, and we're all going to watch it because it's trash, and we just need something on the background for the Christmas when we're hungover and we're with our families and we're full in our stomachs, and we're just going to watch it and cuddle with each other and be cool. And Netflix can put those shows out. The other thing that Netflix has, I'll say, versus any other, and I'm so bullish on Netflix, even though I don't own like a single stock share in Netflix, and I'm actually bigger on Disney, but still, that's a whole other thing. But they also own like internationally, in the sense of where Disney reigns supreme. I'll say Disney reigns supreme in Europe and North America. Outside of that, like, for example, I'm from Nigeria. So when I'm looking for shows to watch, we're not checking for Disney Channel or Disney Plus, because there's nothing that offers anything for us. However, Netflix started paying attention to Bollywood, Nollywood, shows out animes. They paid a huge attention to animes, paying attention to K-dramas and everything else. They were very, very aware of that. They started partnering up with a lot of those studios all across the world, and that is starting to pay dividends, where we see a show from South Korea become the biggest show ever. Regularly, when I'm talking with my friends, we're talking about African shows that we saw on Netflix that became Netflix originals. So Netflix has been on the precipice of that. So versus where Disney is going to get very saturated here in the United States. But I don't see them becoming like, yes, they have amazing brands and everybody's going to watch Marvel movies and all those Disney Channel, all that stuff. Like, we're always going to watch that. But apart from that, when they don't have cultural moments, a lot of cultural moments, where Netflix, and for media, unlike anything else, cultural moments is way more important than like your brand. Like, if you don't have cultural moments where people are like actively talking about your show, and that causes more people to go get a Netflix subscription or ask their friends about their Netflix subscription, then it's not going to work. But Disney sometimes has that, but not all the time. Disney also has Bob Chapek, who is one of the greatest CEOs of all time, in my opinion.
Yeah, there you go. I just want to talk one more thing briefly on Netflix. Then we might get to another question about like our investing history and some other things, and then we'll wrap it up. But this is actually an interesting point. So yeah, Andrew seems to think Netflix aren't profitable, but they have been for many years. So I'll just share my screen here. This sort of gets to the whole conversation about constantly having to spend money on what, from an accounting perspective, is classed as capital expenditures. But that's kind of a discussion that we're trying to figure out here. I'll just share my screen. So if you look at the income statement for Netflix, they look really profitable. But if you look at their actual cash flows, it's an entirely different story. Can you guys see that? So the blue is net income. So that's what you're going to see on their profit and loss statement or income statement. And then you have cash from operations in black, which I'm not sure what changed in 2020. Maybe that's really ramping down spend on new content. But they've been, accumulating debt and burning cash for a long time producing this content. And that's kind of the entire thing I think you need to figure out with Netflix, is whether that stops at some point.
Yeah.
Netflix are masters, if you want to call it, at, in my opinion anyway, at financial distortion. They use the accounting laws that they have available to them to write things off in certain ways, to depreciate things over time and stuff, and to, let's say, they classify it as, oh, well, I'm using this cash flow for investing, so I can actually write this, I can package this up and show net income positive, but make sure you're doing your due diligence to understand the actual cash flows and where they're going, and decide that for yourself. And aside from 2020, when they stopped investing all that capital and showed that they were actually they are a cash cow when they stop investing. The truth is, and that's back to the catch-22, I don't think they can stop investing to keep their competitive landscape. But yeah, don't just look at net income and just say, oh, someone's profitable. You have to dig deeper, because there have been businesses that have gone bankrupt by showing that they're they're net income positive,
Yeah.
but turns out they're losing billions on the bottom line. So really do your due diligence.
Is that the similar problem that Amazon has? Because Amazon is heavily investing back in its business in the sense of like.
They're the opposite though. So Amazon operates at a loss, or has for a while anyway. I think maybe thanks to AWS, they might be operating at a profit now. But for a while they operated at a loss and kept showing that they're at a loss, and that was always the bear thesis to Amazon. But if you really looked under the hood, you could see that realistically they're cash flow positive, but they're taking all that money plus some and investing it back into the business, which may look like
Jeff Bezos's number one metric in all his annual letters and things was the only thing we care about is free cash flow per share. So that was the focus for Amazon, even if it doesn't show up in a rosy looking income statement. Well, let's maybe take one more question. We've got an interesting one here from Mike. We might do a quick sort of go around the full group here. So I'm interested in each of your investing journeys, length of time investing now, how long it took you to work through early mistakes and find your style/approach. Viom, do you want to maybe start us with that?
Yeah, sure. So I started off my investing journey in high school when I took my economics class. Part of the class, we had to create a portfolio, and that's how I got into investing. Early on, I was into penny stocks because it was lucrative, and learned from those mistakes. As I remember, the stock was called Polymet Mining. It was a local mine in Minnesota, which is where I went to high school. And I think I still own it, but definitely not profitable, or didn't have any reason to it other than I just followed a fad and what was popular. Then in college, I got into foreign exchange, went on baby pips and learned everything to do with technical analysis, and traded a bit, writing code in MT4, and it was fun while it lasted, but there was, of course, I wasn't a value investor at that point. I was just in it to see how can I get a thrill and, maximize my money with little amount of time. And then about 2015 is when I came across Preston Pish and Buffett books and the Investors podcast. And since then, I've been a value investor. And early mistakes were, of course, following the fad, not having a true role model on who you can copy, or who do you align with, right? That's the biggest thing is, am I going with penny stocks or trading technical charts, or actually want to dive deep into the fundamentals, which is, of course, busy work, which not a lot of people want to do. And it seemed that doing the busy work was for me. And so now I'm a true value investor, big on margin of safety. I'm okay with letting go of high returns as long as my capital is safe. So that's about me and my journey.
What you got, Justin?
So I've always been fascinated with the stock market. I mean, the compound interest is always, is Einstein that says the eighth wonder of the world. So, I got into investing back, when I was first working when I was a teenager, but it was just in mutual funds. Usually you get with 401k, that's all you get to choose from. And just kind of stuck with mutual funds for a while. And then about 3 years ago, the company I started with had an SEP, or they call it a SEP IRA. With a SEP IRA, you actually have to give the same amount percentage wise to the owners as everybody else in the company. And with that SEP IRA, you could actually start buying equities and all kinds of stuff. And at meeting with Charles Schwab is our broker, and I got with financial advisors with Schwab, and they put me in this robo advisor and the robo advisor basically picks a bunch of ETFs, and I was just like doing just slightly worse than the market, and you have to put a percentage to cash and all that kind of stuff. But I realized that's not why I wanted to go, and started investing in equities. First stock I bought into was Apple, which is my favorite company in the world. That did pretty well. My second one I invested in Taylor Brands, did terrible. long story short, I found Phil Town, read a couple of his books, took one of his courses, and it just resonated with me. It just made sense on his teachings and what you're kind of looking for. So, I would say, 90% of my portfolio is value investing, 10% is kind of speculative. But value investing, you're trying to find a company at a margin of safety that you understand, the management you think is good, has a strong moat, just makes a lot of sense to me. So that's kind of where my investing journey has been.
Cool. Kalichi?
Yeah, so actually, myself and Tom did a podcast that he just released earlier today that you should go check out, because we talked about this whole thing on that podcast. So Investing with Tom podcast available on all platforms and on YouTube. So just open a new browser and search for that.
I'm not paying him to say that, by the way.
But I guess my history with investing was pretty much when I first started working, got a 401k and was doing that passively. And then when I got a new job, needed to transfer that money somewhere else, opened up an IRA, was listening to a Dave Ramsey thing, and he told me I needed a financial advisor. And then I had a master's class on business, and my teacher was like, you need to go talk to your financial advisors and ask about those expense ratios. And then I started learning about that, and I was like, man, I'm getting overcharged. I was like, I could do this by myself. And so started learning more about businesses, really enjoyed the art of learning about businesses, but I still don't even invest mostly in businesses because I just don't have the temperament to be able to handle it. And I know that. So I have my fun play stuff. But I have like 20% that just in single stocks of companies that I like. And then I have Tom in the back of my head all the time telling me about margin of safety. And that keeps me away from danger most of the time. But sometimes I still get fun and dangerous out here. But yeah, that's basically my investing history.
Cool. What do you got, Andrew?
Yeah, so to answer the first part of that, or second part, I guess, length of time investing. Investing on my own about 5 years now. I've been investing a little bit longer than that through work, through my 401k and stuff. But length of time investing on my own, about 5 years. I pretty much got started just because I had a lot of money saved up. And I think I got started kind of how everyone else does. Dabbling around, not knowing what you're doing, but you're just putting small bits of money into the stock market and, losing a couple dollars here and there, making a couple here and there. Not really knowing what you're doing, though. And I did that probably for about a year. So the first year, complete waste, okay? But I learned what I don't want to do. Then I got into like day trading, thinking I could do swing trading and stuff. Didn't match my lifestyle. I realized, hey, I don't want to gamble. It's not my thing. I don't buy scratch tickets. I don't like to go to the casino. I work hard for my money. I want to safely compound it. But at the same time, I'm very risk adverse. I don't like to, if that's the right way of saying it, I don't like to take massive risks, okay? So I'm not going to be an entrepreneur who's going to be a millionaire by starting my own business and stuff. It's just not in my DNA. I come from a very middle-class family who's, very old school and stuff. So that's kind of the way I am as well. So I said, well, what's my best chance of making a lot of money without taking on a lot of risk, right? How can I do this safely? And that's when, stumble onto the Warren Buffetts, the Peter Lynch's, the Phil Towns of the world and stuff. And their teachings really resonated with me as well. And I also just have like this natural curiosity to dig deeper into things, to figure things out and stuff. I've kind of always been that way. So I think it just all kind of molded like that over the course of the years. And I think for seriously investing with the exact set of principles or very closely to the exact set of principles I have now, took me about 2 years. So I think I've been doing that probably for about 3 years now. And it's been working out very well. And to answer the last part of the question, where it's like, how long did you find it took to work through early mistakes and find your style? Like I said, it took me about 2 years to find out how I want to invest. But the truth of the matter is that you're constantly learning. And I know that's such a cliche thing to say, but it's very, very true. For example, during the pandemic, I completely changed the way I look at a balance sheet. I'm very open about it. I was invested in Carnival Cruise Line, which is something I would never touch nowadays. But the matter of the fact is that people say, oh, well, it was a black swan event. You could never have predicted that. But the truth is, I could have entirely avoided that business by, really understanding a balance sheet and stuff. So that only happened a year ago. Something more recently is just over the past 6 to 8 months, I'm learning, or I'm also adjusting my entire investment thesis now to, or strategy, I should say, to really focus on compounders. Because I've realized, I've made a few, 100, 150. I think I've only had one 200% gainer in my portfolio. But because I've taken profits and then rolled that into cheaper stocks, I've lost out on those exact same companies just over the past year, going up. I think one of them has gone up about 1,000%. So I've missed a lot of upside by selling my winners to buy some of these cheaper stocks. So I don't think it's ever a game where you think you have the answer. I just think you're constantly adapting and you're constantly learning and trying to mature and evolve. So, and that's where I stand today.
Cool. And for me, I've been investing probably 4.5 years, something like that. I started out buying. I think I put about half. I think I invested about $5,000 in the first 3 or 4 months when I first got started. I was intelligent enough to put half of that in just an index fund and reinvest dividends, and then the other half went into about 3 companies that I just kind of roughly knew what they did. 2 of them, this is just pure luck. I think 2 of them probably went up like 10 or 15% before I figured out that this is probably a dumb idea. And the length of my analysis was just like, look at a chart on, look up the stock price on Google and it's going up and to the right, and must be a good investment. So I backed out of those, and I think I had one actually got up about 40%, which was fortunate and just again pure luck, but my first little taste of success, which was nice. And then I discovered value investing reasonably early on, probably maybe 6 or 8 months in, something like that, and then started to get quite deep into that. And similar to you guys, it was sort of Phil Town who got me on to it was Buffett, and then it was Phil Town sort of explaining Buffett style investing, in very simple to understand terms. So that helped me a lot. And then you sort of evolve to Monish Prabhai and Guy Spear and Charlie Munger and all that sort of stuff, and you start going down the rabbit hole. So discovered it reasonably early on. I was sitting around just kind of not doing much for quite a few months. I was sort of disciplined enough to not settle for like small margins of safety and things. So I don't think I actually bought my first quote sort of value stock, like a 50% margin of safety kind of thing, until maybe late 2018 even. So maybe sort of a year and a half into it. But slowly been building things out since then. Cool. Any last questions you guys want to dive into, or should we wrap it up there?
CCL position pre-COVID, brutal. Yes, I know.
Yep.
I lost almost a year's salary on that. I don't lie when I say I bet big. So I put my money where my mouth is. Just my mouth isn't always right. So
that's the thing. Live and learn. Better than losing several years' salary when you're 50 years old or something.
Touche,
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Righto. Cool. Well, let's wrap it up there, guys. I really appreciate you joining me for this. I think this is the last live stream we've got for this month. So I'm impressed by the Mo's, and I really appreciate you all joining me. So thanks for doing that, and thanks to everyone for tuning into these live streams. And even if you weren't able to contribute to the Movember campaign, all of the ad revenue on the replay of these streams is donated, and all the super chats are donated. So really appreciate it. But thanks, guys. We'll have to revisit and maybe do this again next year, or collaborate in some other ways. Always open to that. So
definitely. Thanks for having us. It's been a good time. So
it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Good
All
stuff.
right. Thanks, guys. Let's wrap it up there.
All right.
See ya.
See ya.